Okay, welcome Amanda. Welcome Jeanette. Welcome Donna. Before we get started, and as we wait for a few others to join, uh, why don't you type in your chat, creating a balanced life? Let's see, where do you think you need more balance right now? I know for me, I feel like I need to balance between work and sleep, maybe. Rest too for you, Jeanette. Work and relaxation. Yes. Okay. We are all aligned. Welcome. More hours in the day. Yes, Donna, I hear you. How about like 8 more hours? We need a whole extra working day in here. Two days on and 5 days off. Man. Is there anywhere in the world that does that? And when do we go? And how about making sure we're staying balanced as we get closer and closer to the holidays? November, December? Anyone else get a little rushed in those times? All right. Gonna get ready to get started. So welcome. Hello. Thanks for joining us. My name is Kayla, and I'm with the Phyllis and Harvey Sandler School of Social Work at Florida Atlantic University. So before we get started, I want to briefly introduce the Rubin Center for Happiness and Life Enhancement for those who may be joining us for the first time. The Robin Rubin Center is housed in the Sandler School of Social Work within the College of Social Work and Criminal Justice here at Florida Atlantic. The center offers weekly wellness programming free of charge. Students, faculty, staff, friends, and family are welcome and encouraged to attend all of our events, including meditations monthly on Friday at noon and yoga the second and fourth Monday of each month. Then we also have special events just like this one each month. And next month is what we're addressing, using the info and developing a personal action plan for the holidays, like with Donna as well. So come join us for that. But it's never been more important right now to nurture our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness. We are firm believers that it all starts with giving yourself permission to show up and step forward. So for any first timers in the audience today, welcome. And to everyone here, thank you for showing up for yourself today. I would like to introduce you to Marie English Arterberry, LCSW. She is an accomplished leader with an impressive track record, spanning nearly 25 years in the field of mental and behavioral health. Marie is a licensed clinical social worker. She obtained her bachelor's degree from Florida Memorial College and holds a master's degree in clinical social work from Barry University. She has extensive experience working with both groups, individuals, and families. Marie holds several certifications, including Certified Clinical Trauma Professional, Certified Anger Management Specialist, Certified Critical Incident Stress Manager, and Board of Clinical Social Work Qualified Supervisor. Currently, in addition to her own private practice, Time for You Counseling, LLC, she is the principal consultant for Solution Behavioral Health Consulting Group, LLC, a group aimed at empowering organizations to foster a culture of well-being. Marie, thank you so much for being here. Please take it away.
Hello, hello, hello. I was enjoying all of the comments about what it is that we need in order to work on as relates to balance. It is something that we are all trying to figure out on a regular basis, particularly given the fact that we are truly engaged in a level of multitasking that is unprecedented, really. Each of us has a minimum of about 3 ways that you can contact us at any given time. We have our phones, we have our computers, we have different devices. It's one of those things where when you talk about accessibility, it can become so stressful. I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but you have someone send you a message and within minutes, they're wanting to know, why didn't you respond? It's because we know that I know you saw my message, in some way, shape, or form. And so for us, the level of engagement is so high and so just so commonplace for us. So being able to create balance and include the rest of our lives is really what we're going to discuss, because otherwise we spend our days, unfortunately, feeling like we're constantly putting out fires. And so being able to kind of create balance is always something for us to take a look at. I'd like to get started, though, by offering an opportunity for us to do a little exercise together. What happens for us is that we're going to talk a little bit about stress, of course, and our bodies. But I want to start talking about the fact that when we start talking about release, a lot of times an area that our body that doesn't get any release is our neck. Believe it or not, our neck is constantly engaged. Even when you're sleeping, you can imagine your neck is still pressed up against something. And generally, our necks are always, engaged. And a lot of times we'll do this to kind of give ourselves some release. What I'd like for us to do is do a very intentional neck release. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show it to you. And what I'd like for you to do is once I'm done, once I do it, then you'll join me. So we're going to couple this with some deep breaths, but we'll talk about that in a second. So what you do is you take your hand and you're going to cover your ear and you're going to cup your head here. Don't do it just now. You're going to cover your ear with your hand. And what you're going to do for this neck release, you're going to drop your shoulder. And what that means is that you're going to create a stretch between your ear and your collarbone by dropping your shoulder and looking at an angle across your head. So you're going to look this way, you're going to drop this shoulder. Okay? So what I want you to do is go ahead, take your hand and place it over your ear on the opposite side. A little awkward, that's okay. And then what I want you to do is just take your eyes and look up at the ceiling across from you. And I want you to just put your hand on your lap, and then just pull your shoulder down. And while you're doing that, I want you to just take couple deep breaths. But while you're taking those deep breaths, I want you to continue to pull your shoulder down. Don't pull your head. Just continue to drop your shoulder. Drop your shoulder. Breathe in. Dropping your shoulder. Release that breath slowly. One more time. Drop that shoulder, pull it down. Take a deep breath in and hold it. And then release. Continue to drop that shoulder. Excellent. Now, what I want you to do is don't yank your head, but I want you to take your hand on the opposite ear and slowly return your head to the center. Excellent. Now put your other hand down on your lap. Take the opposite arm, cross your ear. We're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Cover that ear, cup your shoulder, cup your head in that shoulder. That other arm, while you pull your shoulder down, look across, and drop your shoulder, breathe in, hold it, release. Continue to push that shoulder down, breathe in again, Hold it. Slowly release. One more time. Dropping the shoulder. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. Now slowly take your opposite hand. Return your head to center slowly. Excellent. So we're just giving our this area here in our neck a release is what you're doing. And you can do that neck release anytime. And it may feel a little bit tense there. That's just your neck, that muscle getting an opportunity to stretch. So every now and then just give yourself a quick neck release because we are holding a lot of stress in our neck. These muscles here in our face, these muscles here in our neck can often get really tense when we are stretched. Does it feel kind of interesting? You feel it there? Excellent. All right. So let's get started. I'm going to go to this mode here myself. All right. So as we said, creating balance. This is where we're always looking for the struggle to get on that scale. So let's talk about this. So the thing about creating balance is that if we aren't able to do that, what we end up in is a situation where everything feels like it's on fire and we end up in burnout. So when we're talking about imbalance and burnout can be very much close together. And what happens for us is that, as we know with a forest fire, it's something that spreads and it can start from something small, but if it's not addressed, it is something that continues to burn and can be destructive for us, both physically and mentally. And so the goal for us is to recognize that to put out those fires while they're small. A lot of times we've heard that, they started by small things like a campfire that was left or a campfire that got out of control. And so when we start talking about creating balance, it's really important to know that creating balance isn't just a fun thing to do. It's not just a good idea to do. It's important for us to maintain our health because we don't want to end up in a situation where we have what be the equivalent of forest fire going on for our bodies and for our minds. So let's take a look really quickly at some of the risk factors when we're looking at burnout and we're trying to decide, have I gotten there and what do I need to do? So if you find yourself in any of these particular categories, you're more likely to experience burnout. So if you have a high workload, then you are subjective to the possibility of burnout. If you work in a helping profession, you're subjective to burnout. If you try to be everything to everyone, that means I'm going to respond within the minutes to every call. I'm going to like every one of my friends' posts. I'm going to absolutely comment. I'm going to be what everybody expects me to be. You are at risk for burnout if you find yourself in these situations for long periods of time. And we're not talking about, occasionally, but when we start talking about this is how I function. So, anybody see themselves raise their hand in any of these three areas? Absolutely. Well, then you are in the right place. So that's good. So let's look at the consequences of that. So when we start talking about some of the consequences of burnout, we are looking at clinical issues such as clinical depression. You're more vulnerable to illness because of the amount of pressure and stress that your body's under. Fatigue and insomnia. I'm exhausted and cannot sleep because my brain will not turn off. And so you are in that area and you're spending chronic amount of times in that sadness, anger, irritability. These are things that are happening in burnout. Overuse of alcohol or misuse of other substances, believe it or not, type 2 diabetes, and we'll talk about that, and your blood pressure. And you're also, consequences can include heart disease. And then, of course, excessive stress for us. And when we are looking at those things. So these are some of the consequences of allowing ourselves imbalance to the point of burnout and why we need to really take a look at that. And so what often happens when we get to a place of burnout is that when we start talking about the work and all the things that are important to us that we love, and the reason a lot of times that we are in this situation is because we are doing things that we enjoy. But when you get to a place of burnout, it just feels like nothing matters and nothing is getting done. And it's just constantly just where I'm just moving through my life. I'm not really experiencing any sense of feeling of accomplishment. I'm not feeling as though I'm doing anything that is meaningful. All the things that I'm doing just seem like more. And there is not this level of balance as it relates to joy or, a level of engagement. We're just functioning. But even at that level of functioning, I'm just functioning at just getting things done. And if you see here in this little example, is that it just feels like over and over, everything seems like it's just repeat. It's big piles, and it starts to spill over into all parts of our life. So we're talking about avoiding those things really being important to us. And so the key components is what I'd like to look at next. And we talked about this in some of the examples, but some of the key components of that is making peace with trade-offs. As we said with multitasking, there's so many things that need our attention. There's so many things that are important. But we're going to look at making peace with those trade-offs. And then also managing your stress. What exactly does it look like when I'm managing stress? Because again, stress is a part of life. But when we start talking about managing stress, we're talking about a whole nother level. And then, of course, managing our moods and how we will do that. So we start talking about what does that look like when we talk about success. Here is what we're all striving for. We want to be successful people. We want to have success in all areas of our life. But true successful people have found a way to make sure that all of these areas are included in their lives. And so when we start looking at this wheel, that literally we need to have each of these areas included, because this is what studies have shown is that these types of things and having engagement in these areas is really um, is important to these things. So one of those we look at is our financial and our career, having those things in order, having those things included in our balance for us. Looking at our mental and our education, making sure that we are taking time to address that issue. Physical health, really taking the opportunity to make sure that we're engaging in exercise as well, because it is also important. Our social and cultural. I think we found a lot about this during COVID is that, wow, the value of engagement and having contact with others and how it really did affect our health. But oftentimes it is something that we will forego because this is something that needs to get done. And I'll get to enjoyment and, socialization and those types of things later. But if in fact we find ourselves as we don't, then we are looking at concerns with our balance. Our spiritual engagement. It's so important for us to recognize that there's something bigger than me. Because a lot of times we feel like if I can't figure it out and there's nothing bigger than me, we're all in trouble. And so having that spiritual engagement, what that looks like for you is so important so that we have that opportunity to recognize that. Family and home. And it's about creating, specifically in our home environment, where we at least have space in our home that feels as though we're able to relax. We're able to kind of make space for peace in our actual physical environment, and then also having harmony in our relationships with our family and our friends. And it's really important. So we start talking about even if it's that space where you have your desk where you just make sure that it has a level of order that's appropriate for you. Those types of things, believe it or not, while they may be small, can really affect how it is that we are able to function. And so when we start talking about clutter, and I'm sure we've heard this, but it is real. When we start about a cluttered space and a cluttered mind, for me, it's one of those things where I can tell how chaotic my life is getting when I look around my space. I'm like, oh, it's rough up in your head because it looks like it in here. So taking the opportunity to be able to just organize, it can be just something small. And what it also does, it actually helps us believe that we can handle other things. When I'm going to tackle this small area. And I don't mean that you got to go through and, hire an organizing company, but it may be just taking on a small area, maybe your desk. It may be a room in your home or something, but creating that can be really, really helpful. And so, in having you, of course, in the center of all these and being clear that it's not about you have to have all of these things in equal parts like it's written here, but it's important that you are looking at having these areas in your life addressed. And sometimes, one of these areas is going to have to take the majority of your attention, and that's fine. But it's one of those where it should not be where it is not inclusive of these other areas at all. And so that you want to be able to take a look at this and be able to say, okay, I'm going to tackle maybe just one of those areas in a better way or in a stronger way, or make this area more inclusive and do it in a small increments. But take a look at this and just think, you know what, the one area that I really know that I'm really low in is, maybe the social and the cultural piece. Maybe that's the area that I'm low in. I'm going to incorporate that at least and make up something maybe one time this month. And then I'm going to make sure that, to add this in. So just take a look at any one of these, because when we start talking about, like I said, successful people is our goal. But really having these things involved really has been one of the tricks that successful people do use and are inclusive of. So somebody talked about being able to have 8 additional hours in the day. And taking a look at that is like, where does our time go? Because, I agree. Some days I feel like I signed up for 24. They told me it was going to be 24. And I think I maxed out at 7. And that was all that I got because the rest of it is gone. And so really we have to take a look at the truth is where is our time going? And so if we, and to really start to take a look at everything being priority one is what we really have to talk about. Because if we were to take a look at our time in a really practical way, and we were to actually, if you took a look at your time and said that it was money, and I'm sure when we start talking about it from that perspective, if we take a look at this, is that all of us know that there's only 24 hours in a day. We know that on a 30-day week, that equals 1 month. And then we also know that if you put 24 hours times 30 days, we have $720 to spend a month. So if you were to think about the fact that we only get $720 to spend a month, and if you were to think about that, that means there's going to be some stuff that we're going to need to take a look at, right? I know for me, if I'm already saying, you know what, how much is the price of that? And we know that prices are going up. And we know that our time is being asked for in lots of different ways. But if you were to talk about where would you spend your money if you only had $720 dollars? A lot of times, I know for me, if I only had $720, I'd be saying, you know what, I'm going to need to, at the price of gas, I'm going to need to carpool. Where are you, which way are you going? I'll drive on Tuesdays, you drive on Wednesdays. We start to kind of come up with those types of things. I'd be making sure that I'm bringing my lunch instead of going out. Somebody may invite me out and say, hey, I'd love to go out to dinner. I said, how about we both pack a picnic and meet at the park? Because I only got $720. And if we start thinking about our time, as we've always heard the adage, time is money. But if we start thinking about our time and what does that look like, then we really would have to start doing, trade-offs and looking at how is it that we are willing to make modifications, and how are we willing to change our priorities and those types of things. Really be able to take a look at that. And so when I say that, it may be a situation where, let's just say someone invites you to a party and you're going, okay, listen, I gotta get this, this work done. I'd love to go to this party. What we oftentimes will do is we try to do it all. We say, you know what? I will go ahead and go. I'll stay there only for like 2 hours. And then when I get back, I'll make sure I work on that. And while you're working on that, you're going to have dinner. So we're trying to do more things in the same amount of time. But trade-offs is really what we have to engage in. So maybe, for example, if it's a situation where you say to someone, you know what? while you're at that party for those 2 hours, you're not really enjoying yourself because guess what? You're looking at the time, you're half listening to conversations, you're not really having a good time. Maybe even the host is realizing that you're not enjoying it. But what if you were to say to that person, you know what, in a trade-off may look like is that, you know what, I'm not going to be able to make the party, but I would love to make something for the party. How about if I make the whatever and bring it over early and we have lunch together on this particular day? So I say that to say is because trade-offs are hard because oftentimes we're battling between things that we find important. This is important and that is important. And so if it wasn't important to us, the likelihood is we wouldn't be struggling with it. And so when we start talking about priorities, we're talking about priorities amongst things that are all important to us. Our work is important to us. The people in our lives are important to us. But trade-offs are one of the things that allow us to be able to have those things and to have them in a quality way. And so taking a look at how much can I do well? And that starts to be a question that we ask ourselves. How much can I do well? Not just how much can I do, but how much can I do well? Because then we don't we start to get away from the guilt that is caused by us not being able to give our best and not being able to do all the things that we need to do. So really trade-offs do allow us the opportunity to do things and to do them well, even if it means we have to do a little bit less with things that are important. So really looking at trade-offs as a way, how can I do those things and how can I do them well? If I only have 720, how will I divide them? So a lot of times when we think about balance, we think about balance as just this whole thing here. This is balance. This is actually perfection. Perfection is not possible. We are not going to end up in a situation where everything works perfectly, as I said. So really being able to recognize that balance is not about equal. Balance is not about everything getting, a portion of me. And even if you look at this here, it looks very interesting because it looks like I got more on one side than I have on the other, but I still have balance. And so that's really what it's about, recognizing that balance is not about equal. It's not about equal because equal is about perfection. And the goal is not perfection. And I always like to say it's not about perfection, it's about doing it well, it's about excellence. And so our goal should be excellence over perfection. Because again, perfection isn't possible, and we're going to end up in burnout if we're constantly striving for perfection. So, all the areas that you may be, as I talked about, that you may be missing, it's not about you getting to a place where all of those are engaged. It's not about getting to a place where everybody gets all of your time. It's about being able to recognize it's not about equal. It's just about balance doesn't need to look like that. I can have, more in one area, less in another, and still have balance. So let's look at managing our stress. So when we start talking about what is it, everybody knows, oh, we have to manage your stress. You go to the doctor, you may say, something's wrong, and the doctor will say, oh, yes, you need to figure out how to get less stress, have less stress in your life. I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but there's nothing that will upset me more than a doctor telling me that you need to, have less stress. Like, oh, well, I'm so glad you mentioned it. I'm just going to take it out of my pocket and leave it on the couch. It's like, thanks, that was really, really good. And they gave you a whole degree and license for that to tell me that. So, what is it that we do when we start talking about managing our stress? And isn't it great when you have to go home and tell, what did the doctor say? Said I need to have, take this and, manage my stress. Like, oh, okay. But let's take a look at, the stress. So we're talking about acute stress versus chronic stress. So let's talk about this. Stress is a reaction to what happens when something activates our body's fight or flight response. It gets your heart racing and puts you on high alert. A wide range of things can cause acute stress. So acute stress is, again, this very much incidental. It's directly associated with something that is happening. Acute stress. I don't know if you've ever had a car accident, but I have had a couple, particularly when I moved to South Florida. I did not realize that is the reason insurance is high here because people really will run you over. So car accidents can cause acute stress. Medical emergencies can cause acute stress. Even deadlines is that this has to be done. Also, unexpected expenses can cause acute stress. Upcoming events. It can be a positive event. Maybe it's a party, it's a wedding, it's whatever, can cause acute stress. Just being in traffic can cause us to feel stress. The weather, even travel, can cause us to feel acute stress. But then there's the other one over here, which is chronic stress. And this is the one that we really want to work on. Chronic stress is a reaction to long-term stressors. These long-term stressors keep our body in a high alert and for an extended time. So now we're looking at the differences that our fight or flight response has been activated in acute stress, and our bodies are designed to experience acute stress. But when we start talking about the chronic stress, what's happening is that our fight or flight response is not rebalancing itself. We're not going back to the homeostasis. And so when we start looking at that, it can be some of the same things, but it's demanding work, financial hardships, strained personal relationships, unstable living situations, chronic illness, and acting as a caregiver as well. So these are things that are long term that can happen for us when we start talking about acute stress versus chronic stress. Again, stress will happen. We know it's a part of life, but it should always be acute and not moving to that chronic. So we start talking about that chronic stress, looking here. Um, we can get upset, we can, get aggressive, have mood swings and those things. When we start talking about those symptoms of the chronic stress, you're going to start getting to moving from having some anxiety to having anxiety disorder. You're moving to a place where you have weight gain, weight loss, that is excessive for you. It's going to be where you start talking about your heart disease and those things, and blood pressures are going to be chronically engaged. So let me ask you a question. What do you think is the number one cause of death for men and women? Anybody? Want to take a guess?
Stress? Heart disease. Someone said heart disease.
Ah, you're right.
I didn't say that. Amanda said that.
Good, good, good. Yes, heart disease, heart, and I have here heart disease. Really, when we start talking about a heart that is not at ease, is heart disease. And truly, when we start talking about the engagement between our heart and our mind, and our is so close related. Our heart is often referred to as our second brain. And it's also stated that our heart is oftentimes has a lot of the feelings, if you will. It's why we have so many of these things. When people use your heart, it's the only organ that we use to describe emotions. My heart, aches for you. I was, my heart was sick with, love. And we have a whole holiday devoted to an organ that is about our feelings. And so when we start talking about the chronic disease and we start talking about how our heart is affected by those, that can be
Girl, you
really
just be
important.
flipping.
Show you the flipping part. You ready?
All right. So let's talk really quickly about what that looks like when we talk about how to address that. Um, Dopamine versus cortisol. So our stress hormone is cortisol, creates cortisol, and then we start talking about the dopamine or the we talk about our happy hormones. And so our endorphins, serotonin, and oxytocin can increase our happy or called our happiness hormones. And so these are the things that are responsible for happiness, movement, attention, learning, and emotional responses. When we start looking at cortisol and we start talking about that chronic stress, cortisol suppresses our immune system, increases our blood pressure, increased our blood sugar, and decreases our libido. Now, remember, this is fine in acute because, again, you don't need to be hungry in the middle of you having to run from a saber-toothed tiger in its most primitive state. So what's happening is that our body is shutting off certain things because it goes into survival mode. But if you can imagine living in survival mode where your blood sugar level is high, so it allows you to move faster, where our immune system is suppressed again for survival. But our goal is not to be able to stay in that state. And so when we start talking about cortisol, it's important to also know that the largest cortisol receptor is in our bellies. And so if you ever find out you get a little extra weight around your belly, it may actually be stress, that you're holding a lot of stress in your abdomen area. So some simple ways to combat cortisol include eating some protein. It's great for our muscles, but it's also great for stress. Less saturated fat. As we said, getting enough sleep. It's giving our brains an opportunity to relax, giving our brains the opportunity to go offline, literally giving our brains an opportunity to really go offline. Smiling is here, and you can actually fake a smile. If you were to act, you release cortisol. If you were to take something and put it in your teeth, you would activate the muscles in your face, and believe it or not, it's a way of releasing cortisol. So actually activating the smiling muscles actually releases cortisol. And of course, as we talk about quieting your mind, doing some meditation. So make sure you sign up for those classes. Hacks for releasing the happy hormones. So one of the ways to release dopamine is again, expressing gratitude, just taking a moment to say, you know what, I'm really grateful for anything. Your body, your brain does not care what it is, but that's a way for your brain to release the reward hormone of dopamine. Oxytocin, you can literally give yourself a hug and your mind will respond in the same way if it was coming from someone else. So you can just give yourself that quick squeeze and it will actually release some oxytocin. Serotonin can actually be released as a mood enhancer by just laughing. Even if it's a fake laugh, you throw your head back and just start laughing. I'm so stressed out. Throw your head back and laugh. Make sure you're by yourself so that other people don't think you're crazy. Also, depression and stress, and we know, eat a little dark chocolate. You can release endorphins. So those are some quick ways to do that. Meditation and relaxation. So being in a relaxed or meditative state is absolutely important. And it's for us to find ways to quiet your mind. Just finding simple ways to quiet your mind are so important. One of the things that I like to do is I will set a timer for 1 minute, and my goal is to be completely still. That's it. The goal is set the timer and be completely still. Do not move a muscle. It's very hard, believe it or not, but it's one of those things to just practice being quiet by physically practicing being still. And there's lots of benefits here. One of the other things is for us to make sure that we're not holding things in, and you're being able to let things out and you're being able to be assertive. And let's take a quick look at that. So when we start talking about assertiveness, a lot of times we're holding things in because we don't want to say anything. We don't want to say the wrong thing. But when we're saying nothing, we're also creating a large amount of stress in our body. So really being able to recognize that assertiveness is very different than aggression, and it's very different than being passive. Because in assertiveness, it's about you being inclusive of yourself and the other person. And so assertiveness has the goal of us being able to come to a common ground. So for us being able to look at those things, when you are being able to be assertive, it's okay to complain. This is a problem for me, but be careful not to blame. Also, when you are being assertive, again, it's about being concise. Don't want to use this as a time to complain about what happened 3 months ago, 3 years ago. Be concise about what it is that you are going to complain, if you will, about. Observe and describe and stick to the facts. So again, this is about, last week on Wednesday. This is about for the last 3 days. This is about this particular incident. So being describing, because what you don't want to do is shut the other person down. Be polite and acknowledge past successes. I'm bringing this to you because you know what, we have a good working history. I really, our relationship is important to me. So these are the things that the person understands, that I'm being assertive because I care about our relationship and I want this to work out, because that's oftentimes why we don't say anything. And appear confident. Because if you're all over the place, this other person is feeling like, oh, maybe there's something you're not saying, or maybe there's a reason, or there's so try to make sure that you can appear confident and stay focused on your objective. So that means if that person is kind of getting off, you're able to say, you know what, I hear you, and I really am willing to talk about that, but I really would like to for us to kind of focus on this particular point that I'm bringing up, so that we have the opportunity to get through this. So really being able to do those things. So really quickly, let's look at some takeaways. So remember, you absolutely can have it all. You can absolutely have it all, just not at the same time. You can have it all, but not at the same time. So engage in some trade-offs wherever you can. Also, remember that stress happens. There is things that are going to happen around us, but chronic stress kills. So it kills our joy, it kills your health, and it leads to burnout. Also, pay attention to how you feel and find ways to gain relief. And that's either through and support through meditation, assertiveness, or even professional support. That means finding a therapist that is, helpful for you. There's lots of different avenues that you can look into, but being able to find those things can be very helpful. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Miss Marie. This is so helpful, and I think I needed it immensely. So I'm hoping it resonated with many others. I apologize. I have a little friend that was enjoying it with us.
I see.
Before we jump into questions, though, if everyone can take a quick moment to complete a brief survey about tonight's workshop, I'm going to go ahead and drop it in the chat. It just takes only a moment, and your feedback is really important so that we can continue to do events and the kind of events that you want to see here in the Robin Rubin Center in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and drop it before my friend takes over the keyboard again. So just one moment. Okay. I do apologize. It doesn't seem to be working. One other second. But if anyone has any questions, you can also chat or you can unmute yourself, and we're happy to review them. So Amanda said, thank you. It's good to remember that we are allowed to express when we feel overwhelmed or agitated. Absolutely. Etc. All right. The survey has been dropped in there. And Jeanette says, thank you. Very helpful. And does anyone else have any other questions came up throughout it? I will say, Maria, I didn't even realize about the serotonin and the hug thing. I do that all the time, or so.
Good, good. Yes, there's lots of
Thank
little ways that we can engage and release those happy hormones because that cortisol is something that's releasing automatically. And so it really is about finding ways to counterbalance that.
you. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of this.
My pleasure.
I just wanted to say thank you for sharing this and taking the time out of your day to do this for us. And it's always good reminders to receive this information again. So thank you.
Good, good. And that's why it's called practice, because it's something that we have to just kind of keep at. And anything we practice, we get better at.
Absolutely. Okay, well, if there's no other questions, I do want to thank you, Marie. Again, just as Connor just said, thank you for being a part of the Robin Rubin Center event today and sharing with us so we can discover what we need to prevent ourselves from burning out and continue to do the service and debunk the myth that constantly pushing ourselves is going to equal perseverance. So, to the audience, thank you again for being a part of the evening with us. I hope you'll join us again. We will have in November, on November 4th, Donna, who is also with us today. She's going to be sharing a holiday blueprint for decreasing stress and increasing peace and joy. And then on October 31st, we will also have a mindfulness walk and talk with Kyle Matera at our Green K Nature Center. So if there's nothing else for the night, then I hope you have a great rest of your evening and be well. Bye.